This is how to start and run a law firm. I'm Mark Lyda. My guest today is Zach Crable. While you might not know him by name, you've probably heard of him, but there's more to his story than you might think. I remember when I first saw the headlines in 2023. Colorado attorney suspended from the bar and fired for using ChatGPT in a court filing after the AI cited fake cases. CBS News, Washington Post, Daily Mail, it was all over the internet. And I remember thinking at the time, wait a second, I know that guy. And not only do I know him, but I know that he's a great guy and a smart attorney. And I remember thinking that the amount of negative clickbait coverage was disproportionate to the admittedly bad decision that he made. And we're going to hear the whole story from his perspective. But that's not what today's episode is really about. Today's episode is about the resilience and the character it took for him to come back and start his own firm that focuses on the ethical use of technology. I hope everyone who watches or listens to today's episode does so with some humility, with some grace, and with some self-reflection. And I hope that you learn from and maybe even be inspired by Zach's ability to emerge from a situation like this, especially early in his career. Honestly, I hope his kids see this someday and can appreciate how their dad dealt with adversity. Because if you're starting or running your own law firm, you're going to deal with some adversity. To me, that's the real story here. Zach Crable is the founder of Available Law, a law firm dedicated to transforming the practice of law through responsible, innovative uses of artificial intelligence. Thank you for being here today, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That sounds so fancy and legit. Appreciate the intro.
As I've told you before, I have a lot of admiration for how you have been resilient in your career. You have faced things that could have happened to a lot of attorneys, but they actually happened to you. And when you think about the audience of our podcast, it's people at the beginning of their journey, whether they've been attorneys for a long time and they're going out on their own, or maybe they're new attorneys starting their firm. And everybody has challenges like these. Yours had this sort of like over-the-top, topical sort of consequences and notoriety. And so I really admire how you went to work owning it and then turning lemons into lemonade. But I don't want to tell your story for you. Why don't you go ahead and do the honors and tell us what happened?
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. Yes, it was a wild ride. It's been a wild ride. So, given who we talked about, your audience being people who are just starting out, maybe even younger attorneys, I think the context is important because it's a hard profession, right? We come into the legal profession and it's one of the most demanding, one of the most stressful. Statistically, attorneys are some of the most depressed professionals out there and have some of the worst mental health problems. And so it's sad, but we've seen it and I experienced it. So from Virginia originally, been out in Colorado for about 5 years, coming up on 5 years now. And context in terms of everything that happened during this, kind of put the last 3 or 4 years in a nutshell. So my mom passed away in my final weeks of law school. So just before finals, during a global pandemic, just before having to study and take the bar and move my family across this country to Colorado. So all of that was kind of a whirlwind. I also just became a father at that time, late 2020, early 2021, I guess. Yeah, that was all a blur. But anyways, so then move across the country, change jobs, kind of career paths, navigating a lot of different things at the time, started this new job. And right as I start that, I get the unfortunate news that I lost one of my brothers as well. So just dealing with a lot of loss and grief and stress. Obviously, starting a new profession, especially the legal industry, is by itself a very stressful job and industry. The mental statistics on attorneys, unfortunately, isn't super positive. It's kind of a very stressful, understandable career. And so dealing with a lot of that when I just started this new job at this new law firm, which turned out to not be so good. So without getting too much.
And just to clarify it in terms of your personal situation. So you lost your mom right at the end of law school. You lost your brother right around the time you were starting at this law firm in 2023? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So actually the first day I was supposed to start is when I got that call, unfortunately. And so that was a hard start for the firm and for me. And yeah, just dealing with a lot, which most people are. But, like I said, context I think is helpful. And so that's where kind of the setting the scene was when I started this at this new firm, and they had just opened a new branch in the Springs. They're a Denver-based firm. And so I was going to be heading that up with another supervising attorney who was also kind of new to the area of civil litigation. So just a lot of new, uncertain things all at once. Second weekend, I think one of the attorneys from the Denver branch was fired for questionable, ethical things, and all of his cases came to us because we were the new firm and we needed cases. So we took those on, and they were, majority of them were dumpster fires because unethical things tends to lead to upset clients and frustrating circumstances. And so the following week, my supervising attorney quits, and then it's just me in the office in the Springs with the paralegal, and I'm dealing with 30 dumpster fire cases out of nowhere in a new area of law, dealing with a lot of also just things on the personal side. So craziest stress I've ever had to endure during my professional career. And it was at that time that this whole AI incident occurred. And so dealing with all that when a client walks in, long story short on the case details, is the individual tried to sell a car to someone. He financed it himself. He drafted the contract himself. He was doing it all by himself, from an immigrant family, just trying to do, various side hustles, very entrepreneurial, and make it in America. And sold the guy this car, and the guy just wasn't making payments on time, eventually stopped paying altogether, and he took the car back, which he thought to put in the contract that he could repossess the car. So he was contractually entitled to do so. But the other guy, instead of trying to make right on the contract, he hires an attorney, sues my guy because of some personal stuff that was in his car when it was repossessed. And again, my client wasn't my client at the time, but he didn't respond to the court in time, and the court just entered summary judgment against him. So on like a $12,000 car, now he owes triple damages for civil theft. And so he owes over $31,000. And it was just a grave injustice. And that's where the case was when he walked into our office asking if there was anything we could do to overturn the judgment.
All those case details, by the way, are public information now. So there's nothing in there is privileged. And the other thing is, now in this story, we're in 2023. And
like springtime,
right? We've all lived through that. And I think it's really easy for people to understand now. We know a lot more about how to use AI. We know what hallucinations are, all that sort of stuff. To you at this time, this was completely new, and you didn't know any, you probably had never heard the term hallucinations and all that sort of stuff. Tell us about your experience, like using AI for the first time.
Yeah. So it was about, I would say, a week or two before this individual walked in our office that somebody in the larger business building we were in had brought AI to my attention. He was telling me how amazing it is, and I got to play with it and try it. And so I'd been kind of dabbling with it for about a week or two prior to the client walking in the office, and all of my inputs and outputs, they were all verified and accurate. And it was really an impressive technology that had, kind of garnered my trust in a lot of ways. The same way that Google or any other, technology does when you ask it a question and it answers it or provides information. And so
the same way, by the way, we rely on that. We rely on the little red flags in Westlaw or LexisNexis, and sure, you should verify it. But when we're shepherdizing cases in legal research, we're trained to rely on some of the information we do receive from technology. Just that's also context as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And so anyways, decided that we would be able to help this guy out, drafted the motion, finished it. It's been about 6 hours drafting. It felt really good about it when I just had the thought, I wonder if AI can do case law research, because at that point I'd just done some statutory research, some basic prompting and stuff like that, and I hadn't touched case law. And I was like, well, that would be cool, because as you know, with Lexis or Westlaw, it's a labyrinth of cases. They're very difficult to find. It's very difficult to find cases that fit your particular your client's facts and all that. And it's very time intensive. And having already, ate through half as a retainer, drafting the motion in the first place, all these things are factoring in. So I had that thought. I prompted AI, ChatGPT, for cases in Colorado, specifically supporting my client's facts, yada, yada, yada. And it just spit out, I think, like 6 perfectly looking blue book citations that, without batting an eye, they look, impeccable. And so there was exactly what I needed. And I was kind of over the moon. I just wasn't really thinking clearly to fact check those. It just looked perfect. I don't know what it was. I think it was a combination of a lot of different things why I didn't look them up. Obviously, hindsight's easy to just say, why didn't you just Google those?
Yeah.
Or let Westlaw them or Lexis them or whatever. But threw them in the motion, submitted to my supervising attorney, got the green light and filed it with the court. And didn't realize until going to prepare for that hearing after I'd filed it that those cases didn't exist, that they were, like you said, hallucinations. So that was an experience. And then that was, I kind of entered this overload of stress and anxiety, like panic state before going into court, not really sure what to do or what to say. Again, not even having any motions practice as an attorney to date on that. Even as a prosecutor, there's just not much motions drafting at all. And so it was all very new to me. And the judge was concerned about intentional misleading of the court. And I assured him it was just, I don't know how it happened. I told him that I relied too heavily, or I leaned too heavily on illegal intern research, and that I'll fix it. I was just trying to get in and get out and fix the problem. And to me, in hindsight, I don't really know why I said or relied too heavily on a legal intern, other than I don't even know what AI is. I don't know what hallucination is. I don't know how to explain to a judge how this could have even happened. I was baffled by it by myself. And so, obviously I should have just said I used this thing called artificial intelligence, yada, yada, yada. But just dealing with a lot of stress and stuff. So
I was wondering, like,
that's what I told him.
In your mind, were you thinking like the AI is the assistant I'm referring to, or intern, or whatever word you used? Is that what you were thinking?
Well, I think there's like a clear parallel there. Whereas like, that's what it felt like, where I asked a research agent to find this thing, and they presented it to me, and I leaned too heavily on it. I trusted it too much, whether it was an intern or whether it was an artificial intelligence research platform. That's kind of what it felt like to me. And so I think that was my brain just trying to use language that I'm familiar with in law firms. And I was just trying to get in and get out. I don't know. I mean, it was just a really stressful time. So it didn't dawn on me until actually until that night. I remember I was laying in bed so stressed out about that day, and it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, wait, what did I say in court? Because that's not actually what it was. And then he asked me to file an affidavit within 7 days explaining everything, which of course I did through and through. Probably over-explained in hindsight, but just wanted to be completely transparent and honest about everything, sent screenshots, like the whole 9 yards. And I remember thinking, oh, that's not what I said in court was not like completely accurate to what I have to file in this affidavit. And it just freaked me out. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't really even realize what I said. I don't think at the time. It was, I was under so much stress and everything. But that's kind of the story. I filed the affidavit explaining everything. He understandably concerned about what happened, and following his judicial and attorney ethical obligations to report things like that, reported me to the bar. And that's what happened. I got a 2-year suspension, which ends, thank God, on February 20th. So about to wrap that up. And it was only 90 days that I couldn't practice law, which, when you have a family of 4 or 5 is actually a big deal. But then I've been able to practice ever since.
Since you go into lizard brain, right? You feel a sense of panic. And I think every lawyer understands that. They may not have been in the same exact situation, but it's like what the judge came in your case and was like, I can't find these cases anywhere, essentially. And yeah, you sort of snap into like a fight or flight type mode or something.
Yeah, he took the bench and he went in, and he was probably talking for 5-10 straight minutes before he asked me to explain myself. So that whole time, lizard brain was just ramping up. And then, exactly.
Well,
I blame lizard brain.
yeah,
I love that.
I mean, it's I guess probably an adaptation when we were having to fight saber-toothed tigers or something, but it still applies today. Okay, and so you're like, yeah, I'll just I don't know, I had an intern and I'll check on it and get back to you and file a clarification with the court or something like that. You just like, you're trying to get out of the courtroom. Okay, all right, and so that's where we are. Go
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
That you are like downplaying taking responsibility for it, or that I'm saying, none of this was your own choices or anything like that. But however,
No, yeah.
context really does
That's a
matter.
good point.
And we're going to talk about the fallout from it, which I thought was wildly disproportionate. But also just the fact that how you told your story shows the involvement, in my opinion, right? Thinking fast and slow. What is Kahneman and Tversky? And the idea that in the moment, in the courtroom, you're saying what you feel like you need to say to get through to the next moment. And then when your system 2 thinking kicks in and you're able to consider things more fully, then you file that brief that's like, here's the transparency of what actually happened. So that's a lesson for everybody to realize in the moment. Can I try to step back and sort of buy some time to let that higher level of thinking kick in and get out of sort of fight or flight mode? I think that applies to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a good rule of thumb is like take a deep breath, count for 10 seconds. Even if it looks weird, you'll probably, end up thanking yourself later for just taking a breather before speaking. And so, pride gets in the way too of that. You want to get in and get out, save face, and that sort of thing. So,
and
so
like I said, these things evolved
I concur.
to help us survive in the wild when we're dealing with saber-toothed tigers and whatnot. We now apply them today to like an email I don't want to write or a dispute I'm having with opposing counsel or something, for all of us, that those systems kick in. And I remember one time I was really stressed out about a case. I didn't feel like things were going well. And I thought of that Carl Sagan thing of where it shows this panorama of the solar system or even, the galaxy. And you can just see Earth as a tiny blue dot. And he says all of the problems and accomplishments and people of history, all of that just happened there. And it's meant to, give us a sense of perspective. But I remember thinking through that when I was having a difficulty with the case and thinking, I bet if I squinted really hard, I could see my problems on that little blue dot. It didn't really give me the perspective. So that's how disproportionate these problems feel to us. And that's why those systems kick in my view. So if people are learning from, and I think being inspired by your story of resilience, it's worth talking about the aftermath from that whole situation. I mean, you were like, what was it like to go through that?
Yeah, it was a formidable experience for sure. Looking back, I can see a ton of growth. I forget who said it once, but it's like if you want to grow, get uncomfortable, right? So whether that's trying something new or flinging yourself into a global PR scandal,
Growth opportunity. Yeah.
It'll stretch you, and so yeah. It was really hard. Like I said, there was a 90-day period where I couldn't practice law. And so because of that, my wife had to go back to work. We had just had our second baby at the time. She was still nursing. So my wife is, going back to work doing night shifts as a nurse. And she signed a year contract. And so she had to do that. And I had to essentially become a stay-at-home dad, which, I think it's the Japanese who require mandatory 2 years of military service for every male, I believe. And I think every father should have to do like a mandatory 90-day stay-at-home dad boot camp or something, just to give them a glimpse of how hard it is, and it makes them appreciate their wives way more. So shout out to all the moms out there.
Yeah.
Y'all are, what y'all have to do every day is amazing. So I had to do that. That was really rough. But in the throes of that and in the quiet of that, when it was quiet, I had this kind of like an epiphany. I was praying through it, really having a hard time figuring out like how to go forward from here. I had news agencies, trying to contact me to, get a piece or, get a cut of the PR. And it was insane. I had no idea what to do with it all. And the irony of the whole situation kind of hit me like a freight train, where I realized that the technology that, bit me in the butt was probably the same technology that either then or sometime in the near future, definitely now, really would have helped the individual and my client maybe seek justice without an attorney getting involved. He would have had much better odds at the very least of defending himself or having a chance at justice. And so had he used AI to draft the initial contract, to understand his rights post breach when the other guy stopped paying, or to understand like the intricacies of the court and when to respond and how to respond and all of that, I think he would have been in a much better situation. And so it dawned on me that I think the technology is going to be revolutionary. I think it already is in a lot of ways, and we can see it happening across industries and across different disciplines and professions. And I think it's ultimately going to be a tool for good and increase access to justice, because, this guy, he really got a severe case of injustice, and that happens all the time to people. This is just one anecdotal evidence or anecdotal, story of this happening to millions of people across the world. And so I think the technology is going to be awesome. So in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, what if this technology eventually makes legal services available to everyone? And then that's when it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, that's a cool name. And then I realized AI was available. And so I was like, oh, that's perfect. I'll just call it Available Law. And it started out, I was like, well, what if I just start a website, start a blog, start something to try and, get my story out there, start promoting this technology. Because I think there's like a clear sense of purpose that came out of it and advocating for access to justice initiatives. And so that's kind of how Available Law started. And it's since transformed into, mainly like a business focus and estate planning focused law firm, but still leverages technology for document automation, communications, et cetera. So, that's kind of the long story.
In the future, there will probably come a time where lawyers who can't leverage AI will be committing malpractice, because there are multi-billion-dollar companies built around trying to do what you did, just more reliably, like literally. Right. Just
for
as,
sure.
would you think of a lawyer who can't use basic online legal research? It'll be like that for AI someday. This podcast is presented by Practiced, modern law practice management software. We built Practiced at my firm because we were tired of fighting our software. Workarounds, clunky systems, way too much admin. So we built our own, and it cut our admin time by over 70%. Practiced makes running a law firm feel lighter. Intake is fast. Engagement letters just work. Time, tasks, and expenses stop piling up. And Practiced's AI assistant can do anything a human assistant can do inside the system. You can also hand it your messy notes, forms, or questionnaires, and it generates clean, polished documents using your templates. Or just forward an email and a new matter appears. Practiced even helps you get more clients through marketing and advanced referral network features. Everything works right out of the box, no separate software for intake and case management, one system, no duct tape. And it's just $20 a month. All features, no add-ons, no nickel and diming. Get started in minutes at practiced.io. That's practist.io. But yeah, I mean, it's you sort of gloss over it like, oh, I just went through this thing and then had this idea. But to me, as somebody who's just, watching this, talking to you, it seemed amazing to emerge like that. You mentioned you were praying through it. I always think I'm a person of faith too. Guess maybe I don't talk about it very much or enough or something, but I always think, when bad things happen, are you praying more or are you like, you know, praying less? Going through doubt and all this, and then and you'd had all this happen
Yeah,
with your
yeah.
family and stuff. Um, I don't know if you want to talk about that more, but it was like I guess the question is like, what was the process
Yeah.
like to go from the depths into like I'm gonna do something productive? How fast did it happen? How did it happen?
Yeah, it was probably a couple weeks in. It was probably a couple weeks in that I was just in that moment of prayer and had that irony kind of hit me, and I felt like God just kind of downloaded this idea
Mm,
for this business into my head and got really excited about it. So I was probably a couple weeks into like that 90-day suspension that happened.
cool. And then when the idea hit you, you received the download. You're just like, let's go, and you took action.
Yeah. I formed the LLC really quick. I wanted to make sure I got the name, the URL, and all that. And so
Mm-hmm.
all that went well. And then it just started kind of like as a blog more than anything. I just started a website and wanted to start writing about kind of the story, and just really excited about the potential for just building the community of attorneys, especially younger attorneys, and like the mental health side of things. So just had a lot of different ideas going off at the time, and jumped on it, and then had to just power through the 90 days until I could get back to work, and then started back as a prosecutor, just kind of building the business on the side a little bit, because just
Mm-hmm.
prosecution's my wheelhouse. It's my bread and butter, and I love it and I know it. And so did that for a while. And then pivoted actually, spent this past year doing, working for a startup that, you did an interview with, Teen Business Academy. So kind of in the homeschool market,
Mm-hmm.
teaching teenagers all about entrepreneurship. I got with them very early on and helped work with like the regulatory agencies and everything, getting that startup launched. And that was super fun. And then had since recently started at a new estate planning law firm, while I'm building available law on the side. So doing estate planning and then marrying that with like people's business plans, which is really cool. And yeah, in a really good spot now. So really thankful for that. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind past 5 years.
So, who would be a good client for available law? Who should reach out to you? And yeah, who would be a good fit and why?
Yeah, anyone. I've got like kind of this 3-tier approach to legal services on the business side. So
Mm-hmm.
I love working with startups and solopreneurs, even teen entrepreneurs. I'm super passionate about teen entrepreneurship. I think it's on the rise, and I think they're going to be competitive in the marketplace very soon, especially with AI and the tools that they're going to be able to build and deploy with minimal, investment and stuff like that. So love working with solo entrepreneurs, startup companies, on LLC formation, contract drafting, operating agreements, all that sort of stuff to make sure that they're starting off on a solid foundation, or small to medium sized businesses who maybe didn't do all that upfront legwork, but now are getting established and feel confident, but need to get their ducks in a row with contracts and all that sort of thing. Love helping people get their businesses cleaned up legally, and anyone also who's doing estate planning or needs their estate plan done, or they're a business owner who's concerned about how do my business interests transfer upon death to family? How does that work? What if I get in an accident? Who can take over the business? Powers of attorney, all that jazz. So yeah, anyone who needs business or estate planning.
Awesome. And then you also, you're talking about working with younger people. Obviously, this podcast is not certainly not limited to younger people or anything, but it's got that mentorship aspect to it. I know that's important to you. So, what do you have to say to people starting law firms or earlier in their career? You mentioned wellness and the mental health side of things. Like, what message do you want to get out there for all newer lawyers and newer law firm founders to know?
Yeah, that's a great question. Somebody said to me recently that, and I love this, and I found it to be true, that mentorship is the only shortcut in life. So
Hmm.
I would pocket that little golden nugget and work hard to maybe network and connect with enough people until you find somebody who's willing to invest in you and mentor you. Preferably like just a genuine relationship, like no financial exchange. I think when you start having paying for
Yeah.
mentorship, it can get a little
Yeah.
interesting. Not that I haven't experienced that, but mentorship is huge, obviously. And so try and find somebody that can kind of speak life into you and see things that you can't see about yourself. But also, yeah, the mental side of things is super important. So you got to take care of yourself, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all of those things. You're more important than your career. And so I think a lot of people sacrifice like their mental integrity and their well-being and their physical well-being to, you know, climb a corporate ladder, or just to, you know, make ends meet and stay in the jobs that they're at, even though they hate it, you know. I think there's a lot more opportunity out there. And so I always encourage people to don't stay in a job that you hate. I think life is way too short and way too fun to just suffer every day. And so there's tons of opportunity out there. Entrepreneurship is a great opportunity for a lot of people who don't fit the traditional mold. And there's, you know, I think becoming more and more people like that. And so I think, you know, entrepreneurship is a great option. And the earlier you start is the better. And so if there are any younger audience members who are listening to this, who are thinking about, you know, maybe being a business owner one day, start now, start researching it, start your own little business, start selling something, you know, get early on exposure, because it's all about repetitions and developing that muscle, and under the mechanics of entrepreneurship and business ownership and cost versus expenses and revenue versus profit and what it all means. And so that's why I was super honored and loved working with Teen Business Academy, because I think the more that we empower the youth to take control of, you know, their futures in terms of their opportunities, the better. And I think the better outcomes, you know, smaller law firms, healthier cultures, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, I think that's what I would say. I would say start young and find a good mentor, and yeah, pray a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And, you know, thanks for indulging me on those questions, because I'm glad we were able to talk about available law. Obviously, that's the thing I want to promote for you. But I just, your whole story to me just sort of transitioned from this guy got a raw deal to like, this guy's amazing for adapting and being resilient. And I hope that people see his story and realize they can make it through whatever professional challenge they're going through right now.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate
because we all have them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I hope that it inspires others. And yeah, if I can get through it, you can too. Yeah, I can't imagine it being much worse than it was. And so there's always light at the end of the tunnel. There's always hope. You know, there's a lot of really sad statistics about the mental health. It's one of the top 3 most depressed professionals in the United States, I think. And so, yeah, taking care of yourself is way more important, even if that means a career pivot. You know, I've seen attorneys even at that last law firm that I was with that was so underwater and hemorrhaging and so stressful that they were like, I think I'm going to switch careers entirely. And they did. And so, yeah, there's just, you don't have to stay stuck. There's no such thing as being stuck. This is the land of opportunity, and you just got to learn to pivot and be flexible. And yeah, when life gets you lemonade or lemons, you make lemonade.
Yeah, I saw that in a headline about you.
Yeah.
It's like attorney turns AI lemons into lemonade. And that's exactly what you've done. You know, I love what you said about you're more important than your career. That's incredible and so hard to remember, especially when as attorneys, we've been working for it for so long that really our identity becomes pretty tied closely, you know, in an intractable knot with our career. And so you don't have to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
By the way.
They're not even all that cool.
Yeah. It's not like TV. But starting a firm, this is something I always say, is a great way to be in control of your career. Yeah. Because you can craft it in accordance with your own values. Right. If you're at someone else's law firm, you're working in a system that's set up around their values. Yep. If you make your own law firm, you're the author of that story. So I really encourage that as a way to break that downward mental health spiral as well, or the sort of stress or shame cycle that some attorneys, definitely a lot of attorneys, get into.
Yeah. I certainly wrestled with that. I mean, an identity crisis of who am I? And, when your name is all over the internet and you can't find work because people Google you and, they just write you off. You start to definitely wrestle with who am I? And, um, having our identity and the right thing is very important. And in my opinion, that's having our identity in Christ. That's the only reason I was able to get through all I've gotten through and can smile and feel super hopeful and excited about the future is just because of my faith. And, my marriage, my wife was awesome all through that time, and we've just grown so much closer together and closer to God. And so, I think it's really important to have our identity grounded and rooted in the right thing. And that's certainly what helped me out a ton. And so also community, like we weren't meant to live in isolation. I think a lot of attorneys live in isolation about the stress that they're under and about what they're dealing with. And there's awesome community out there that you don't have to do this alone, whatever you're going through. There's people who care and want to, uplift you and support you and help you. And so, if anyone's listening to this and that resonates with them, reach out to me. Obviously my contact info will be on the pod or on my website, but there's always someone there for you.
Yeah, that is incredible. Okay, so it's availablelaw.com. To your point, if somebody wants to reach out to you as a client, as a mentee, as a colleague, available, just traditional spelling, available law, all one word.com.
Yeah.
Zach, I really appreciate your time today, hearing your story. I hope that people listen to this and hire you and are inspired by your resilience and learn to lean on the same things that you leaned on to turn these lemons into lemonade. I appreciate you being here, man.
Love it, man. Thanks for having me. Look forward to catching up soon, brother.